Hey Ramblers, before we kick off today's episode, I just want you to know that we're finally ready to launch OffSource and it's going to be in October. The team is working tirelessly and endlessly to bring you an amazing product and service. So if you know anyone that needs a virtual assistant or just like to make some extra money for our referral program, tell them to head to offsource.tech or text info to 516-408-2427. Make sure you're following us across all social media at OffSourceHQ. Now let's get ready to ramble. Before we begin, a moment from our sponsor.
All right, good morning, guys. Welcome back to another episode of The Ramblings. I'm your host, Angelo Roberts, and we have an amazing, I think probably our largest name of a co-host to date, Christina Sanders. She is a venture capitalist, private equity CEO, and many more things. So introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Angelo. Really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the invite too. Yeah, so I just basically, for the last 7 years, I left corporate and started basically, advising athletes, professional athletes and their branding, marketing efforts and, basically how to, kind of like start generating revenue and take the next steps off the field and off the court. And then I got really involved in venture capital when I joined the community venture capital fund, junior board around Cleveland named Jumpstart. And I started getting involved in it and started, building out, the infrastructure to launch my own fund. So that's basically what I do.
You said you are working with athletes and celebrities. I'm sure We're interested to know what kind of celebrities have you worked with, kind of athletes have you?
Yeah, so like when I actually just to kind of take it back, just kind of give everybody a little bit of just kind of context on what I just said was so basically I was a marketing director at BMW before, and then before then I started my career off as a marketing manager for Bernie Merino Companies, which is like a really large at the time it was like one of the largest like auto dealers in the like Midwest. So basically we had Aston Martin, Mercedes-Benz, Infinity, all these different things, Nissan. And so I was like, tasked with this job of working with all these athletes that we signed and to endorsement deal contracts to create some type of level of activation for them that would create an ROI for the company, right? So a lot of times people just kind of sign athletes blindly and expect their sales to increase without any real plan. And so I just kind of was noticing as like there was like frustration on both sides of the aisle, right? So there would be frustration from the executive brand perspective where they would say, we're signing these guys. What are they doing for us? Blah, blah, blah. And then there would be frustration from the representation. And then it's like, like, what's the point? What are we doing this? I don't feel like I'm being paid enough, blah, blah, blah. And one biggest thing that I noticed was the way that people were conducting business in the sports space wasn't the same as the way people conducted business in the business space. So if you wanted to actually go and, just say you wanted to go do branding or marketing or have some type of idea that you had, you would usually kind of come to the table with a quantitative case and a way to be able to say, hey, this is why it's advantageous to work with me, just further than just saying, hey, I got a lot of followers, and then be able to have measured, goals along the way to say, okay, well, this is where we are with this. This is how this campaign performed. This is how this commercial performed, this whatever. But there wasn't that type of communication that was being had. And so one thing that I just started doing was basically teaching guys and even our team that was interacting with them how to build quantitative cases. And then it started to show that when we were utilizing athletes and also just tweaking just certain things that we were doing, even from our licensing deals, not even just with athletes, that we were beginning to show a better ROI.
Okay.
So then at that point, I ended up starting an agency doing that.
So in that bridge of the gap, for the people that are new into this particular kind of space, what would be a quantitative kind of measurement? So when you say quantitative, we obviously know we're talking about like physical numbers that, we can see and how they reflect it in other parts of the business. what would those metrics look like? What are those, like, what are some of the key metrics that people on the business end and then people on the celebrity end are trying to work with?
So yeah, so one of the biggest things that people like to see when you're doing marketing campaigns is like attribution, right? So like, I mean, like if you were to just say open Google Analytics, there's a lot of different things that basically point to attribution, customer acquisition costs, actual ROI, like when you sell your product or service, just say like, I don't know what you do, but just say if you were selling cars, right? So another metric would be cars sold. And then also basically how much does it cost for you to get the customer, right? So how much do you spend on pursuing a customer? So that's customer acquisition costs. How much advertising and marketing do you have to do to even get your brand message? How long do consumers stay on the content that you're pushing in front of them, right? So like your time on site, and then your attribution, right? So if you're sitting there like, okay, where is this lead coming from? So people can sit there and say all day long, oh, well, I brought in this many leads, but did you really, like, how are you showing up in the world? How are you being found? You know what I mean? Is an athlete bringing their audience, to your brand, or is it something else? Like, and so basically just showing that those type of different metrics, showing exactly how many people are engaging with you in a meaningful way, what your conversion rates are, not to bore the shit out of you, but and then how it's actually converting on a literally dollars to cents basis. So you could literally go on I would probably say like hundreds of different KPIs depending on the industry that you're in. But for the most part, I think the biggest disservice that people do is to just really just say, hey, I got X amount of followers, because when you start looking into the followers, there are algorithms that it's set up, right? So most social media sites and Google and all that, they're optimized for the paid person, right? So at that point, it's like, you telling me you have 100,000 followers isn't really gonna help me, like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, like, how many of those followers actually engage with your product? How many of those followers can you actually draw and create unique visitors and then increase time on site, like stuff like that.
So it's a very tight niche space that you're in, and you're just talking about how you went from working in automotive and working with the celebrity brands and everything. What started your path in that? Because as a community, as Black people, we're not necessarily drawn to those spaces, and you kind of happen to be drawn to like the mix of, okay, we want to either do business or we want to do entertainment. So how is it that you kind of navigated your way into like this niche working of both spaces?
Yeah, I never wanted to be in sports. Like, I would be honest. Like, I wasn't like, that wasn't something that like I woke up and was like, oh yeah, like that's what I want to do. And like, I was impressed by that type of lifestyle. I remember when I actually started my agency, I cold called because we were members of the same country club, and I didn't know the guy from Adam. And so he started IMG at the time before Endeavor bought it, but it was IMG. And he started it with Mark McCormick, and his name was Arthur Lefebvre. And I went out of my way to reach out to this man because we were members of the same country club. That was literally my only strength, right? So, and I asked the membership director to make a warm introduction for me, which I definitely know, especially in the venture and the tech space, like people don't really like warm introductions, especially now, like because people, associate that with a level of privilege. But I think to a degree, I didn't come from anything. I want to be clear on that. But is when I was making money, everything I did, I spent money to increase my network, right? So like, I'm 21 years old working, for different brands like Aston Martin, Mercedes-Benz, all these different things. I don't know rich people. So at that point, what I had to do was I had to get around the type of clientele that I was serving. So instead of me spending, $200 or $300 at the local, club, like, and getting my drink on every night, then at that point, I knew that it would be advantageous to join boards, to get civically engaged, to join a country club and things like that. And so once once I like, you know, because I just knew I needed to basically further my vision, so to speak, you know. And I think like to a degree, like you said about like some of our people, like the biggest thing that we need to focus on is furthering our vision. Is just my personal opinion, because it's like a lot of times what we think is reality is so far different from what's actually available to us. Like I tell the kids that I work with all the time in urban education, and that's why I'm passionate about urban education. Like I'm on the board of a Catholic school here that's mostly African American, and we had a meeting, and the girl was like, "Oh, I was like, you know, where do you want to go to school?" She was like, you know, a local community college, which I'm not going to name because I don't want people to whatever. But and she had like a 4.7, like she was AP student. The white girl, you know, had a lower GPA, and I was like, "Where are you going to college?" She said Boston University, and I was like, "No, like, you know, that's the difference. You know, a lot of times we will be overachievers and high achievers, but for whatever reason, because of the vision and what we're instilled and what's capable to us, like we always try to push Black men into trade things, like, oh, go be a plumber, go do this, go do that, go into these obsolete jobs, when technically we should be teaching our young Black boys how to code, how to, you know, like actually expand in the world." And so, and I just think that to a degree, it's about vision. And so I cold called him, and he was like, he was so shocked, you know. I think like he was like, I walked in with a yellow dress, Angelo. Like I walked in with a yellow dress on. He was like, "You got 30 minutes." I stayed for 4 hours. I was like, "Listen, I'm going to launch this firm because, you know, an NFL player asked me to help him with his marketing. So I need you to tell me how to run an agency." Like totally naive.
Wow.
Like legit. And he's looking at me like, "Are you kidding me right now?" I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. He's like, "Most people ask me for a job." I was like, "I don't need a job. I got business. I just don't know how to run the company. So like, can you just show me how to like run the company, how to do this and how to do that?" And I spent about 4 hours in his office, and we mapped out how next play was going to look and what we were going to do. And how we were going to serve people. And that's where we kind of went from there. But I mean, I think like I've always been reaching up, if that makes sense. You know, like I never was willing to stay where I was or stay where people thought I should be, you know.
Wow, that's one. A lot of people on our podcast are going to resonate with that, because one of the big things that we've talked about throughout this entire podcast is vision. You know, it's about consistency, vision, and just going after what you want. You know,
Yeah,
spending this time to better invest in yourself, because before you can put your time to invest in anything, you want to make sure that that time that you're investing is quality time. So you have to be a quality person. So in your search and how you did that grind period, a lot of people would be extremely nervous to break into that space or even do that cold call. What was your process for overcoming now, if you're an extrovert kind of person, that's a little bit different, but if there was a process for trying to overcome the fear of cold calling a person that's at this higher level than you, like explain how you got over that initial, I'm going to go talk to this person.
Yeah, so I'll be clear, I am not an extrovert. I'm not at all. Like, to be honest with you, it took me about 30 minutes sweating because to send the email, but I did it because I'm like, you know, I didn't want to seem like I was being awkward. And then I also didn't want to get kicked out because I'm like, I mean, I'm emailing a guy code. But I think the biggest thing about me was like, but right now, like I handle rejection like really, really well. And the reason is because I just think that like, I don't take it personal. So when people sit there and they're like, no, or like, can you curse on the podcast?
Well, I'll let it slide for this one. I'll let it slide. So, you're like my favorite guest so far.
So like when I first like started out, you know, and I would literally just say at an event doing marketing or whatever. And I'm like, hey, you know, come over here, or I'm at a trade show, or I'm trying to get people interested. People would tell me stuff that you shouldn't tell people, like, literally, like, oh, go fuck yourself, like literally people would just like tell me, you know, all these type of things, and I knew that it wasn't a response to me. You know what I mean? Like, legit. I'm like, hey, you know, you want to go sign up for our ride and drive or something, just say I'm doing.
Mhm.
And, you know, you're just kind of kicking it, you know, just trying to be a friendly person. You're 20 years old, you know, and I had organized this event. And so I'm really excited about it. I'm just trying to solicit people in the public. And it probably was a bad idea at the time, but like, I just go back to think about where like my rejection, you know, skin kind of toughened up at, was I'm like, you know, people would tell me, you know, fuck off, like, leave me alone, you're a scammer, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, seriously, like, you know, you're just sitting in, you're just sitting, like, in the IX Center or whatever it is that the Connecticut has, you know, and you're just, you know how trade shows work, right?
Right.
Yeah. And, like, they would just, like, people would just get mad about it. Like, you know what I mean? Just say, like, it just, and I just think I was like, well, you know, that's okay. And then I think that when I was even starting my business, like, you know, just emailing people and picking up the phone and calling people and just saying, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. Some people were for it, some people weren't. And, you know, you would just be surprised how rude people are when they don't know you and when they're not looking at you, if that makes sense. Like, and I don't mean not looking at you as in like being on the phone or being on the computer, but like not seeing you. So like you could literally be in person with somebody and not see them. And so like at that point, like, the way people treat human beings that they don't need, you know what I mean, is terrible. So but I stopped making it a meaning about me, like, because I mean I could be crying every day, like, legit, like, I mean even now as the day, like, you know, just say, like, for example, like, before, like, I'm over here getting the infrastructure, you know, for my fund together, there were so many people that were like, yo, like, I don't really want to like talk to her because she's just a young Black girl. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's like essentially because it's like, I don't look like, you know, the old gray haired white guy. Like, you know what I mean? So I just think, yeah. So I think it's just about not attaching meaning to, you just don't attach meaning to no. Like, you know, and no doesn't always mean no forever. No could very well be no right now. Like, if you go ask somebody, right, hey, you know, you want to go buy a Porsche, they may not be telling you like, I'm about to get a divorce and my assets are about to be cut in half. They'll just say no. So like, but that doesn't mean like in 6 months when they get the settlement
that they will come back.
You know, so like, I think it's just that. And then I think another thing too that people really need to learn is like, whenever I approach people, I always approach people in a way that will be mutually valuable to them. Like, I don't sit there and say, hey, Angelo, let me go get on your podcast real quick so I can go promote myself and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit there and say something like that. Like, you got to really, and not to go off on a tangent, but this is how you pitch, right? So literally you literally need to identify like what you want from it and who the person that you're asking, what they serve, and what do they want, right? So that's one of the things that I always go into. Whenever I'm doing something, I'm like, what does this person want? Do they want more brand recognition? Do they want more followers? Do they want more money? Like, I mean, what do they want? And when you approach somebody always in the intent of what they want, magically they're willing to give you what you want, you know? And so I think that when you're doing a cold call, when you're doing an email, when you're, you know, doing whatever it is that you do, that's just, they keep the person in mind, you know, but still somehow bring it back to what you want as well.
I love that. And you touched on a point that I want to go into, because Black women have been a very key, fundamental part of this business. I run a virtual assisting staffing, still iffy on how it goes, but
that's smart.
I mean, it started in January and then Corona hit, so it kind of was okay. But one of the big things is Black women have been a large supporter, and I've been doing a lot of networking. Like, so since the beginning of January, I've networked my ass off, and that's how I kind of got to this point, I feel. But one of the biggest things I've realized is Black women are taking a large jump in business. And you are in a very when, again, going back to tight niche, where it's almost now exclusive. You're in, you know, entertainment and sports, which is very gray-haired old people, and then venture capital, which is a bunch of gray-haired old people. So in those two things, what have been the challenges? Because a lot of Black women watch the podcast. As a Black woman, what has been your challenges, and how have you overcame those challenges navigating these very gray-haired white people spaces?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I think the biggest thing that Black women can do is to understand and be aware that yes, bias is out there, but not lead with it, in a sense. Because I think, and when I say not lead with it, like, I can tell you so many stories about the anxiety that you might feel sometimes going into a situation, because you already know that you're going to be hyper criticized or hyper analyzed, you know, for when you know, when you look at my stats, and I'm not a big bragger, but if you were to go into like my business stats, like, I've been successful, and a lot of women, you know, that are not of color couldn't say the same thing. You know, but the same women of color, now the same non-women of color, the same men will be the first people to try to pick you apart, right? But you can't sit there and be focused on that. You have to be focused on your mission. The whole reason why I ended up getting passionate and starting a fund was because I was like, you know, like, I was looking at the check sizes that we were giving to people of color, right? I mean, like, just say you're sitting there, and the average check size for like a person of color is in the thousands, and the average check size for a white-led company is about 5.1 million. The price of equity, and the price of equity isn't just like a numerical dollar amount. It's basically stating a value. And basically what you're saying every time you don't fund a Black business that is profitable is you're saying that you, sir, ma'am, are not valuable in this economy. And you know what I mean? No matter how valuable your product, no matter what the numbers are, I'm saying you are not valuable. Your leadership is not valuable. Like, and I needed to change that. And so at that point, I went to work on figuring out what it would take to bring together a fund that would not only be one of those impact funds where we're writing $25,000 checks, but how can we write the same equivalent checks? How can we provide the mentorship around these founders in the form of, you know, helping them with their management processes and improve their management processes, you know, in order to take their companies to the next level, and then also you know, position them for favorable exits. So I think that was you know, kind of the goal here. And I think that the thing that makes me keep going every day, because I literally had this conversation with my mom. Like, I remember sometimes, like, when I would leave the country club, like, I would cry because sometimes, like, they would say like racist things to me. And like, I remember a guy telling me something to the effect of like, you know, it takes balls, because a woman like you, even 20 years ago, wouldn't even be allowed in here. And you know, and to say the things that
to your face,
to my face, and to say the things that people have said to me, you know, in executive positions and things like that, I'm like, listen, like, if I were to focus on that type of stuff, like, if I were to focus on microaggressions, I would literally implode on myself emotionally, you know, like, you know, like, I would literally, like, you have to literally stay focused on your mission. You can't stay focused on the one person. Like, literally, like, out of all the great people there, you got that one guy.
Right.
and then you like really hyper focus on that one guy. So, and that's what we have to do, because you have to stay focused on your mission, because it's like, God didn't put you on the planet to for all this other, you know, nonsense. So I just think that's what I do. I just kind of mentally stay detached from it and above it, you know, to a degree.
So transitioning with that, how has that led into today? Because we are in now a state of crazy tension, racial tension as of right now, is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
What is your take on what's going on, how it's perceived, and how that affects us doing business?
I think it's favorable for us doing business, because I think that people are starting to realize, like, you know, they have been purposely ignoring, you know, Black businesses and Black-led companies for a while. And I think that there is a little bit of I guess, proverbial reparations on that, you know, because they're like, you know, Black founders have historically been locked out of capital, have historically been, you know, marginalized. So I think, like, to a degree, people are starting to wake up and realizing that if you don't have diversity in your portfolio, you are designing a portfolio that is doomed to fail. Because you look at, by 2030, essentially, like, most of the world is going to be majority colorful. So at that point, you're putting yourself in a position where the next Mark Zuckerberg isn't going to look like Mark Zuckerberg. The next $1 trillion company, the next Jeff Bezos, isn't probably going to look like a Jeff Bezos. It might be a, you know, Janita Bezos. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Janita.
So, like, I mean, so you're sitting here that putting yourself in a position where, you know, you got women, you're leaving money on the table by not investing in women. You're leaving money on the table by not investing in minorities, and you're just doing yourself a disservice. So I think that people are starting to wake up to the fact. I think that, and then a part of me thinks that, you know, a lot of us are getting sucked into what doesn't matter right now. I think that, to a degree, our media does, you know, a terrible job of feeding us things that constantly keep us kind of divisive with each other, if we're being honest. I think, like, you're in Connecticut. I don't know what riots were there, but I mean, you would look at the Cleveland riots, like, you would think the whole city was like that. And that was literally just one block. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like when that happened. And so I'm like, we have a lot of pain in the world. And I think that we need to start focus on coming together and not just being so, like, divisive to each other and so hard on each other. And I think that, to a degree, seeing, unfortunately, what happened to that gentleman, George Floyd, really brought a lot of compassion back to people, because you're sitting at home and you're watching a guy die on your screen. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you're Black or white, that's a human being. That's somebody's dad. And it was a wake-up call for our nation. You know what I mean? You got a guy literally trying to break up a fight and get shot 7 times in his back. Like, you know, like, we have to do better. But I mean, it doesn't mean that like we should do stuff like drastic, like defund the police. Absolutely not. Like, but at the same time, does the police need to police their behavior? 100%. You know what I mean? Like, legit. And I think that's the biggest thing that we need, that we're getting to. I realize that it's starting to have an accountability effect, which I'm glad about.
I like that. Accountability. We actually, me and my co-founder, we're coming up with an accountability process as of right now. So accountability is probably, I think, the word of the week. So before time runs thin, and I got to get you out of here, we'll ask you one last question. We like to consider ourselves a family here at the Ramblings, and we all together, I consider that the people that have supported me and what we do and everything as part of what we've done. And so I like to say that we have collectively just raised $100,000. And so, to a company that is new or young like mine, what would be your primo or top tier advice for a go-to-market strategy? Or like, what would, if you were to tell someone that is in the process of going to market, what would you give them as their key? This is like something that you should, everyone should always be aware of and focused
on. What do you, so can you explain what you do? And I'm sorry, I'm kind of analytical, so that question is like, like, okay.
So we provide
we're
virtual assisting or staffing, if you will. We provide human capital in the form of a virtual assistant to micro business owners, 0 to 5 employees, but working in the minority sectors, to provide them with humans, actual people that assist them with their things like admin, social media marketing, bookkeeping, all of the non-revenue generating tasks so that they can expand their revenue. Because most small businesses with 0 employees only have like $50,000, and 1 to 4 employees, they average about $387,000. So we know that because they can't necessarily afford employees, but they need to scale, we provide actual human capital that allows you to have an employee without having the drawbacks of an employee.
Okay, got you. Okay, so how I would go to market with that is I would literally because the way you explain that to me, I'm hearing cheap, easy, scale, right? So legit, I'm able to scale my business cost effectively and I could do it easily, right? So I'm not sitting here trying to get on the same time zone as somebody in India or Australia or something like that. I got people here, it sounds like, I'm keeping it local, and I have the opportunity to scale my business. That's going to bring me back time. And then I can do it cost effectively. So I would literally create my go-to-market strategy would just be going balls to the wall on all the content that you can push in out on ease of use. You know what I mean? Why you need to be doing this, why a pandemic is the perfect time to scale your business, to double down on your business, to invest in your business. And I would literally go all in on that. And then I would make myself the king of that space because I haven't seen any local things. I mean, there's Fiverr and all that other stuff, but I haven't seen a US brand that is basically like that. Perfect example, there's if you listen to Bloomberg, there's an answering machine service, but I would be like that. I would become the Uber of virtual assistants.
Got it.
Legit, I would go all in on that. And I would make it look modern. I would make it look chic. I would go that's all you would hear all day long from me.
Okay. Last question. Favorite athlete that you've met?
Favorite athlete? Tom Brady. That I met, yeah.
You said that because we're in New England and everyone's gonna you've met Tom Brady.
Yeah, so by accident. So anyway, I was over here. I was rolling through the tunnel. I was rolling through the tunnel of the Browns, right? It was Tom's first game back after his 8-game ball suspension or whatever the situation was. He was deflating balls or something. And so I saw him in the tunnel or whatever case may be. And I gave him my business card and told him, I literally shot my shot. That's what I'm saying about reaching up. Guy didn't know me from the Man on the Moon. At the time, I was still marketing director at BMW, but I knew what I was planning to do. So I was like, hey, I just was letting you know, if you ever need some branding work, I got you, blah, blah, blah. Good seeing you, man. Good luck out there. I was like the freaking audacity. So he probably doesn't even remember, doesn't give a shit. But that's probably my favorite person I met.
You met Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Or maybe I was bothering Tom Brady. I don't know.
Probably that one. Thank you so much for coming, though. We're gonna get going because I know your time is tight and my time is tight. So thank you so much for coming.
No
we
problem.
all have you.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, you're the biggest name we've had, so this is really cool for us. So,
thank you.
If you want to give a shout out, if you want to give a shameless plug or anything, feel free. If you want to shout out next play or anything.
No, I actually I talked about my fund because that's really the chief of my focus right now is literally growing that and building out everything that I can for that, because that's just the most important thing. Because like I said, I think that to a degree I definitely get working with athletes is cool, but the way I looked at life, I was like, okay, how do I really help people get to the next level? And I realized that it's gonna take something different than what I was doing, and so that's my chief focus right now. So
thank you for sharing it. Then we'd love to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Certainly. Feel free to DM me on Twitter. I'll probably be hitting you up.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye, Angela.
Before you go, Ramblers, if you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and make sure you're following me across all platforms at Assistance HQ. Catch up on exclusive content and keep track of everything going on at OffSource. See you in October.